Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel Russia in Context. I'm Wyatt, and we're here today once again with the segment Russian News You May Have Missed. I know, it's crazy, right? It seems like I just did this not that long ago, and I promise I'll be doing other videos in the near future, but a lot has happened, and I want to make sure that you all are in the loop. So we'll start with the biggest stories from the last weeks in chronological order, meaning first up is the drone attack on the Kremlin. This actually made headlines abroad, so I have no doubt that you're familiar with this. The big question is, who is responsible? And as strange as that may sound, there are three variants as to who could be behind such a provocative move. Let's start with the obvious, Ukraine. Russia immediately blamed Kiev, but Ukraine has openly stated time and again that it has no desire to attack into Russian territory, that their goal is to return control of their internationally recognized borders. That said, sending two small drones straight to the heart of Moscow would certainly send a message to the Russian government, demonstrating Ukrainian capabilities at striking targets they deem valid, regardless of distance from the front, in order to achieve their goals. However, there have been numerous drone attacks on air bases throughout Russia, some even deeper within than the Kremlin, as well as the explosion on the Crimean Bridge, so the military higher-ups are likely well aware of this capability. Plus, such actions would seriously rile Western leaders, potentially causing them to question further supplying the long-range weaponry that Kiev desperately wants. The second idea floating about the interwebs is that this was a false flag operation, an attack by the Russian government on itself. This explanation has some popularity because it fits with the other online theory here in Russia, that the bombings which launched the Second Chechen War were done by Russian intelligence agencies. Russians are just as prone to conspiratorial thinking as Americans, perhaps even more so, given the extreme lack of government transparency. The false flag theory was also popular given the infighting that seems to be transpiring among various government figures and agencies, perhaps an attempt by one to make another look incompetent. Others thought it could be used to justify escalation in Ukraine, yet Russia has never needed pretexts for their actions, typically preferring to find justifications after the fact. Regardless, tearing down political opponents or constructing a casus belli could have been accomplished without making Russia's internal territorial defenses look paper thin. The last explanation making the rounds involves counter-resistance cells operating within Russia, groups who stand in opposition to the government and which may or may not be working in conjunction with Ukrainian agencies. This would seem to be a logical explanation, what with the haphazard nature with which the attack was carried out, the fact that it seems more of a test of what is possible than anything else. However, no group has come forward to claim the drones as their act as of filming, so who knows. Nearly 3 weeks after the incident with the drones in the Kremlin, there is still no definitive answer as to who is the culprit. Much like the Nord Stream destruction, both sides blame the other, and the act remains little more than a political talking point for either side and an embarrassment for Moscow's air defense systems. Around this same time, there was an attempt on the life of a Russian politician, Zakhar Prilepin. Prilepin's car was destroyed by a bomb planted under the passenger side. A last-minute decision to switch places with his bodyguard so that he could drive likely saved Prilepin his life. The bodyguard was killed in the blast and Prilepin seriously injured, though he was quickly transported to a hospital and is currently recovering. Prilepin is an interesting figure. 2 decades ago, he made waves in the Russian literary world, authoring a series of picaresque novels, which were quite popular due to their depiction of borderline hopelessness of provincial existence and the harsh realities of soldier life in the Russian military, something which Prilepin had first-hand experience with serving during the Chechen Wars. He was also something of an opposition figure, campaigning against Putin and government corruption, as well as including, some agitprop elements in his storylines. This all changed radically after 2014 and Russia's Crimean Spring, at which point Prilepin did a sharp 180 and began to wholeheartedly support the Kremlin, entering into politics as well. He even created his own battalion to go fight in the Donbass over 5 years ago, and has bragged that it has killed people in big numbers. Atesh, an underground partisan movement, which was founded last year in those Ukrainian oblasts Russia claimed sovereignty over, has claimed responsibility for the attack. It nearly slipped my mind, but May 9th, Victory Day happened. That might just be due to the reserved nature of the event and its relatively restrained show this year. The Immortal Regiment, a grassroots march to remember relatives killed in the Second World War that was co-opted by the government over the last decade or so for better optics, it was given a soft cancel and access to the parade route was heavily restricted, leaving the center of Moscow largely empty on one of the country's most important holidays, save for plenty of Siliviki, the ubiquitous police force. The parade was almost entirely devoid of any heavy military machinery with no aircraft, maybe due in part to the drone strikes the week before, though as far as I can recall, they never planned for them to appear this year. There were plenty of trucks and missile carriers, but the only tanks were a trio of T-34-85s, which were welcome for being historically accurate for an event that is ostensibly focused on World War II. Still, the parade this year paled in comparison to the dictatorial wet dream of years past, when the parade was the definition of someone overcompensating. Visiting the parade this year were 7 foreign leaders, an infinitely larger number than last year's 0. The heads of state were the usual suspects of former Soviet countries that haven't yet achieved escape velocity from the gravity well of Moscow. Armenia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and of course the old favorite, Belarus. Alexander Lukashenko, the latter country's president for life, had people talking. He didn't look too well sitting next to Putin, and observant eyes noticed his right hand was bandaged. He had to be shuttled to the grandstands in a golf cart, and he had difficulty traversing the level 300 meters to pay respects at the eternal flame. And then instead of sticking around for the luncheon and Kremlin photo op afterwards, Lukashenko immediately headed back to Minsk as soon as the parade wrapped up. This was all plenty enough to get the gossip mill activated, but when he was not present at Flag Day for the celebration in Belarus, speculation kicked into overdrive. So to stave off rumors of his untimely demise, Lukashenko released a video which did nothing to convince anyone otherwise about his health, thanks to his waxy pallor, strained voice, and the fact that his other hand was now bandaged. In order to prove that the video hadn't been pre-recorded, Lukashenko mentioned the most recent news event that he could muster: the fact that 4 Russian aircraft had been downed in the Bryansk Oblast. Seeing as how the Russian Ministry of Defense hadn't commented on that situation and still hasn't, I guess we can thank Lukashenko for the inadvertent confirmation? Speaking of that, on May 13th, the Russian Air Force had its worst day of the conflict thus far, losing 4 aircraft, 2 helicopters and 2 warplanes. It's possible that they were shot down by Ukrainian forces. However, a version being hinted at even by pro-Kremlin sources, including Yevgeny Prigozhin, the owner of Wagner, is that Russia's own air defense systems shot the aircraft out of the sky. Petty drama better suited for the mercurial temperaments of high school teens has never been missing from the upper echelons of the Russian political system. But the infighting between major heads of the special military operation is on almost a new level. Yevgeny Prigozhin, again the owner of the Wagner mercenary group, came out swinging recently.
Официально министру обороны НГШ, верховному главнокомандующему, нести без боеприпасов потери в Бахмуте, бесполезные и неоправданные, мои парни не будут. Поэтому с 10 мая 23 года мы выходим из населенного пункта Бахмут.
Now, such outbursts are not uncommon for him, but the situation this time around was different. For the last half year, 9 months, he has been sending wave after wave of soldiers at Ukrainian positions in Bakhmut, gradually capturing territory by grinding through men. Western sources claim that the number is around 100,000 dead and wounded, but the Kremlin refutes this, telling people to refer to their officially published statistics, which, of course, haven't been updated in something like 8 months, but yeah, they're accurate. Now, obviously with the fall of Bakhmut just a few days ago, Prigozhin clearly didn't abandon his positions. However, it was massive drama here at the time. There was a lot of uncertainty as to what was going to happen. After his announcement, the Ministry of Defense promised to supply all the required ammo, although they didn't really do that anyway. And additionally, Ramzan Kadyrov, the combat LARPing president of Chechnya, jumped in and vowed to relieve Wagner positions with his own forces. He didn't. Also, Prigozhin dropped a video to his Telegram channel on the 9th of May where he was spitting fire.
Вчера пришло боевое распоряжение, в котором было четко сказано: первое, важное,
это в случае ухода с позиций будет признано как измена Родины. Это к нам обращение. Если не будет боеприпасов, то мы уйдем с позиций и зададим вопрос, все-таки, кто Родине изменяет. Видимо, тот, кто подписывал. И в ближайшее время начнется контрнаступление. Они абсолютно четко говорят, контрнаступление будет на земле, а не по телевизору. Потому что пока в нашей стране все думают, что нужно сделать все в телевизоре. И отпраздновать День Победы. День Победы – это победа наших дедов. Мы на миллиметр не заслужили этой победы. Вместо того, чтобы воевать, у нас все время, крутятся интриги. У нас Министерство интриг вместо Министерства обороны. Поэтому у нас армия бежит. Бежит, потому что 72-я бригада сегодня просрала 3 квадратных километра, на которых у меня погибло порядка 500 человек. Команды, которые им сверху даются, они просто абсолютно преступны. Всех с праздником Победы наших дедов. А что мы ее празднуем? Большой вопрос. Надо просто про них вспомнить и все. И не выебываться на Красной площади.
А счастливый дедушка думает, что ему хорошо. И что делать дальше стране, если он окажется прав, дай бог всем здоровья. А вот что делать стране, что делать нашим детям, внукам, будущему России, и как выиграть войну, если вдруг случайно, я просто предполагаю, окажется, что этот дедушка законченный мудак.
Now, criticism of this type, and let's be honest, any criticism in general of the government is a big no-no for us mere mortals. Sure to land you with a sizable fine or even jail time, but Prigozhin has been able to get away with this for some time now. However, his last comments about the happy grandfather, well, they seem to have rubbed some people the wrong way. Now, he made sure to clarify that he wasn't talking about Putin, that the insult was aimed at Gerasimov or one of the other Ministry of Defense guys, but everyone sure seemed to interpret it otherwise. Since then, Prigozhin has become a persona non grata on the Russian media, which may be frustrating for him, but as consolation, he should know at least that the Japanese media sure seems to enjoy his content.
お前らの子供は YouTube 動画を撮って人生を楽しんでいる。弾薬が 70% 不足している。
Шойгу! Герасимов!
弾薬は一体どこにあるんだ?
In May, there were 2 large-scale public gatherings in which tens of thousands of participants came together in a display of unity you probably weren't shown by the Western mainstream media. Granted, it all had to be done in Minecraft, as the Russian government isn't allowing large crowds of any sorts in real life. The first event was hosted by LDPR, a political party that is just a reskin of United Russia, to garner support for the run-up of what would qualify as democratic elections this fall. The party claimed that around 12,000 people took part from around the whole world, which is incredible, as the servers that they were using are only capable of hosting around 100 players at a time. It's worth noting that some of the attendees' characters looked like riot police and others as pro-Ukrainian activists, which led to a bit of a scuffle in Minecraft, but it's Russia. Of course there would be riot police in a virtual gathering. The second online event was the aforementioned Immortal Regiment. Still, I suppose booting up Minecraft and hopping around with a pixelated likeness of deceased grandparents or great-grandparents is slightly better than the other option they gave for participating in the Immortal Regiment this year, which was printing a photo of those deceased grandparents or great-grandparents on a t-shirt. Now, I can't say for sure here, but I would assume that beyond the seeming distrust of citizens gathering in public spaces, the government also forbid them from holding the Immortal Regiment this year due to the Kremlin's irrational fear of handheld signs. Though the government explained it was to keep people safe from potential terrorist attacks in areas with large gatherings. However, there seemed to be no problem with massive groups coming together in Victory Park on Victory Day, but what do I know? Last time I mentioned the wildfires raging in Siberia, and since then the situation got worse. Tens, if not hundreds of thousands of square kilometers of the countryside was ablaze. At one point, the country's 4th largest city, Yekaterinburg, with a population of 1.25 million people, was blanketed in smoke similar to what Moscow experienced in the summer of 2012. Authorities are attempting to get the situation under control, but it appears as though they lack the manpower, equipment, or both to do so. On May 10th, the governor of the Kurgan Oblast, one of the region's most heavily affected, declared that all fires near villages had been brought under control. This is after several were completely destroyed by the flames, leaving 21 dead and 13 injured. The governor of Kurgan Oblast promised financial aid to those affected by the fires, which is wonderful. However, once the size of this aid was known, many did a double take. 50,000 rubles, or about $650, for residents who had lost everything, a sum which is 10 times less than the average price of a home in the region. There aren't even low-interest government loans to be given out, as sometimes are offered in disaster zones in the States. Evidently, the government budget, already a gaping maw, can't scrape together more than a pittance. Also, the website that allowed you to track the wildfires using satellite imagery has recently been paywalled behind a price tag of 47,500 rubles, or again, about $650. So for all I know, the situation is totally out of control at this point with the wildfires. And isn't it kind of ironic that it's basically the same amount that you have to pay to access those satellite imageries that is being offered as disaster relief by the governor of the Kurgan Oblast? Speaking of money, let's transition to some quick economic indicators. In spite of the somewhat rosy picture macroeconomic figures may have you believe, on the level of the average citizen, things aren't great. According to Росстат, the Bureau of Sanitized Statistics, consumer spending is down by 7.5% from the first quarter of last year, with grocery spending down by approximately 3.5%. Though when considering total inflation over the last year, Russians are spending less rubles, which have less buying power, which means less food. Long-term goods like cars, clothing, and electronics have seen sales decrease by over 10%, and unsurprisingly, Russians are spending even less on luxuries of any sort. Case in point, the average fast food bill has gone down by 30%, though it's hard to say if this is due to Russians tightening their belt or just disenchantment with the local McDonald's knockoff, Vkusny Tochka. Part of the decrease in these numbers is likely tied to the large number of citizens who have emigrated from Russia over the last year. Most were some form of middle class, and even those who weren't were still young and active, earning and spending in their prime. Some estimates have placed the number of people who left the country as high as 1.2 million, an outflow that will have negative economic and demographic impacts for decades to come. One section of the economy which has seen an uptick as of late is alcohol sales, which have increased so much that the country's legislators are surprisingly worried about the well-being of the citizens. And discussions are floating about to forbid the sale of alcohol from 8 o'clock in the evening until 11 the following morning, as well as whispers of raising the minimum age to buy drinks with over 17% alcohol from 18 to 21.
Что касаемо пьянства, пить надо начинать с утра и более уже ни на что не отвлекаться.
While these measures may help, they're just as likely to drive citizens to drink things which are even more dangerous. And without addressing the root cause of growing levels of alcohol usage, limiting access won't be enough. And with that, you're once again all caught up on Russian news you may have missed. I do realize that as I was working on this video, Bakhmut fell. It is now under Russian control. And also there was a diversionary group from Ukraine that entered into Russian territory in the Belgorod Oblast. And that's kind of an ongoing situation even right now as I film this. So obviously there is more news that maybe you have missed. So, I will be sure to fill you in on those stories in the near future as well. But for now, we're going to wrap up this video here. As always, if you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them down below. I always respond. Put a big old like underneath the video and subscribe if you haven't already. It is summertime, and I will be going out in the near future and making more videos about Moscow and the city and showing you, some things from actually within Russia, not just news or cycling. But for now, I hope you found this informative, maybe entertaining. But yeah, regardless, as always, thank you very much for watching. This has been Russia in Context. Thanks for watching.